The sun in the village of Abataku always rose red, a fierce warning before the day's heat. But for Baleba, the farmer, the sun brought only shame. Baleba was not a bad man. He was honest, his hands were strong, and his heart was kind. But his yam farm, the only thing he had inherited from his father, was cursed. Every season, while his neighbor's crops stood tall and green as a chieftain's robe, Baleba's withered into brown, brittle stalks, like forgotten bones. He had a wife, Bisi, whose smile was the only true warmth left in his life. He also had a problem larger than the drought, a mouth that could not keep a secret. It was this mouth that had cost him his peace. If a neighbor whispered a rumor about the village elder, Baleba would accidentally shout it across the market. If Bisi bought a new wrapper, Baleba would brag about the price until she was scolded for extravagance. He was not malicious. He simply craved the attention that came with knowing something others did not. On this worst of days, Baleba stood in his field, a man defeated. The last of his yams were rotten. His family was hungry. The shame felt heavier than the hoe he carried. Bisi, he confessed that morning, his voice thick with tears. I am nothing. I am an empty god. Tomorrow I must leave to seek work in the city, and you will stay here, shaming your beautiful face because you married a failure. Bisi only held him tighter. Baleba, my husband, your heart is not empty. Do not speak of failure, but promise me this. Whatever you find, whatever hardship, do not let the words escape you. Silence is sometimes the truest shield. Baleba promised, but the promise fell thin as morning mist against the scorching sun of his worry. He returned to the field not to farm, but to bury his hopes. He dug deep, wanting to hide his hole and his despair where no one could see them. The soil was dry and unforgiving, smelling of dust and broken dreams. Clank. The sound was dull and finer, not the sound of rock, but something hollow. Baleba knelt, pushing the dry earth aside with frantic fingers. He pulled it out. It was a skull. Not the white clean bone of something long dead, but an old skull, the color of dark clay, with moss growing in the eye sockets and the teeth slightly yellowed. Baleba was about to toss it aside when a deep, resonant voice, like a cello playing under the earth, spoke clearly into the still, hot air. Talking is why I am here. Baleba froze. His heart hammered against his ribs like a panicked drummer. He spun around. He was alone.
He looked back at the skull. The moss in its eye sockets seemed to shift. I said, talking is why I am here, the skull repeated. The voice was calm, ancient, and deeply magnetic. I spoke too much. I told too many secrets, and the earth swallowed me whole. Baleba fell back onto the dirt. This was not a spirit. This was a thing, a living, speaking, bone-white secret. Who are you? Baleba stammered, forgetting the shame, forgetting the drought. All that mattered was the incredible, shocking knowledge he now possessed. The skull seemed to sigh, a sound like dry leaves scattering. I was a king long ago, a king with an unstoppable tongue. I told the secrets of the gods, and they cursed me into this silence, or this talking, depending on your view. But listen to me, Baleba of Abataku. I have a gift for you. The skull explained the gift. The earth is rich here, but you are poor. That is an imbalance. If you hide me, if you protect my silence, I will pay you. Every morning, when the dew dries, look under this exact spot. You will find a single bag of gold coins, enough to make you richer than the king of this land. Baleba's eyes widened, reflecting the impossible promise. But the skull's voice turned into a menacing low rumble, like distant thunder. You must never, ever tell a soul I speak. You must never reveal the source of your wealth. Not Bisi, not your mother, not the village elder, and especially not the king. If you ever say the words, "The skull told me the secret, and that is why I am rich," then the earth that hides me will open its mouth again, and it will not eat a king, it will eat your whole world. Baleba felt the greed and the fear wrestle in his chest. Greed won. He looked at his barren field. He thought of Bisi's sad, gentle face. He needed this. He would be silent. He would finally be important. I promise, Baleba whispered, his voice shaking. He carefully wrapped the skull in his cloth, dug a small specific hole, and gently buried his secret. The next morning, where the skull rested, there was a small, dusty leather bag. Inside, the heavy, shimmering gold of the ancient kings. Baleba was rich overnight. Baleba's life transformed. His old hut was replaced by a mansion that stood taller than the tallest palm tree. He bought all the fields in the village. Bisi wore fine silks and did not have to weep over the stove. Baleba became the most respected, most celebrated man in Abataku. But the price was heavy. Every evening, when Bisi would look at him with love and confusion, asking, "My husband, where did this blessing come from? Tell me, so I may pray to the right spirit," he would simply smile and say, "Bisi, it is the blessing of hard work and the good son."
He would see the doubt in her eyes. He would see the distance growing between them. The gold was filling his house, but the secret was emptying his heart. His old problem, the need to talk, became a physical agony. When the village men praised his business sense, he wanted to scream, "No, it's the skull. It's the ancient talking skull in the dirt." He would pinch himself hard under his robes just to keep the words locked behind his teeth. News travels faster than the cheetah's run when gold is involved. Soon, the news of Baleba's unbelievable, unexplainable wealth reached the king, Oba Babatunde. Oba Babatunde was a man whose pride was as vast as his kingdom. He hated mystery, he hated not being the richest, and he hated that a simple farmer was suddenly receiving more praise than he was. The king summoned Baleba to the royal palace. The palace was built of stone and power, and Baleba felt very small walking into the great hall. "Baleba!" the king boomed, his voice echoing like thunder in a cave. "You were a beggar. Now you wear more gold than my queen. Answer me truthfully. Where does this wealth come from?" Baleba knelt, bowing low until his forehead touched the cold marble floor. "My king, it is a blessing. The earth smiled upon my humble efforts." The king slammed his fist onto his throne. The sound was a command. "Do not mock me, farmer. No amount of effort yields this fortune. You must have stolen it from a lesser kingdom, or perhaps you are dealing with dark, forbidden spirits. Tell me the truth, or I will have your home searched and your family locked away." Baleba felt the blood rush to his head. He thought of the skull, buried, silent, waiting. He thought of Bisi and their beautiful golden life. He held the words back. "My king, I swear by the gods of our fathers, I speak the truth. It is a blessing from the earth." The king, outraged, threw Baleba into the royal dungeon. For 3 days, Baleba sat in the cold, dark silence of the dungeon. The only sound was the dripping water and the hungry rats. He was terrified of the king, but he was petrified of the skull. The third morning, the king came to the dungeon personally. "Baleba," the king said, his voice soft, almost pleading, a dangerous sound. "I will give you one last chance. Tell me the secret. If this is a magic ritual, I will perform it. If this is a lost treasure, I will share it. If you tell me, I will make you a lord, second only to me." Baleba looked at the king. Here was a man, offering him everything, offering him his freedom, his titles, and his life. All he had to do was say the words. His old habit, the terrible, overwhelming need to share an astonishing secret, rushed forward like a tidal wave. The thought of being the man who knew the secret, the man who had the power to make the king rich, was too much. His silence, the hardest thing he had ever done, finally broke.
Baleba's voice was a ragged whisper. "My king, I must tell you, I could not lie to you. The money, the gold, it is the skull I found in the dirt. It talks and it told me its secret." A great heavy sigh seemed to pass through the dungeon. The sound felt like the earth itself had just breathed. The king did not look angry. He looked relieved. He looked victorious. A talking skull. The king chuckled, shaking his head. Baleba, you are a lunatic, but I will not kill a lunatic. I will simply expose your madness. Guards, release him. Bring him to the marketplace. Let him lead us to this talking skull. The king gathered all the villagers of Abataku in the central marketplace. Baleba, dressed in his dusty, shamed robes, was forced to stand before the crowd. This man, the king announced, pointing at Baleba, claims his wealth comes from a talking skull he found in his field. We shall now see this great wonder. Baleba, lead us. Baleba, now deeply ashamed and terrified of the skull's cause, led the procession back to his old barren field. He fell on his knees at the spot. His hand shook as he dug. The crowd held his breath. The king looked on with a smug, superior smile. Baleba found the dark, clay-colored skull. He held it up for all to see. There, Baleba cried, his voice desperate. Speak. Tell the king your secret. Tell them how you made me rich. Silence. Complete and absolute silence. The skull remained nothing more than a grinning piece of bone, dull and ancient. Baleba shook it. Speak. I command you. Tell them how talking is why you are here. The crowd began to murmur. The king's smile widened into a cruel sneer. A talking skull? The king roared, laughing with great satisfaction. This man is mad. He is a liar. He has shamed me and shamed this village with his greed and his nonsense. Guards, take him, execute him at once, and throw that useless bone into the river. As the guards seized Baleba, dragging him toward the execution stone, the skull spoke. But it was not a whisper. It was a thunder, a sound that shook the palm trees and silenced the entire crowd. The earth itself seemed to groan. Skull, voice of thousands ancestors, talking is why I am here, and talking is why I am no longer silent. The king stopped laughing. He turned, his face pale, to stare at the skull. Skull, Baleba, the farmer, was foolish. He could not keep a secret, and for that he lost his gold and his life. But he had not heard me talk, not truly. He was just a vessel for a secret. But you, Obaba Batunde, you are the king, and you demanded to know a secret that was not yours to keep. You heard me speak with your own ears. Now you know the forbidden truth.
Before anyone could move, the ground around the king began to blacken and crack. The earth under his feet suddenly disappeared. It became a churning, dark void, smelling of rot and ancient curses. The skull leaped from Baleba's hands and plunged into the darkness. I was talking because I saw something you have not seen. The king screamed, a sound of pure, unadulterated terror. He tried to run, but the earth had locked him in place. The darkness swelled up and swallowed him whole, cloak, crown, and all. There was a sound like stones crashing together, and then silence. The crowd stood, horrified, rooted to the spot. Where the king had stood, the ground slowly sealed up again, becoming hard, dry, and silent. But sitting right where the king had been was a new skull, clean, white, crowned with the king's gold circlet, and utterly, eternally silent. The power of the curse had been satisfied. The earth only wanted those who heard the forbidden truth. Baleba was spared. The guards fled. The people scattered. Baleba walked slowly back to the spot. He saw the new skull, the king's skull, silent and warning. The original dark skull was gone forever, satisfied with his new company. Baleba was no longer rich. The gold never appeared again. His family's mansion was later taken by the new king who was installed. Baleba was simply an ordinary farmer again, but he was silent. He went home to Bisi, kneeling before her, tears finally falling, not from shame, but from a terrifying wisdom. Bisi, he whispered, his voice hoarse, I kept no secret and I almost died. The king demanded a secret and he was swallowed whole. The earth does not forgive those who crave the forbidden knowledge. The greatest treasure, my love, is not the gold the skull offered, but the peace of a quiet tongue. Baleba lived the rest of his life simply. His crops still struggled, but he never complained. When the villagers gossiped, he would nod gently and walk away. He learned that some silence is a punishment, but the silence you choose is protection.
And sometimes, the most captivating story in the world is the one you are brave enough not to tell. Now, what would you have done if the skull talked to you? And what unspeakable secret would you risk your life to keep? Let us know in the comments below. Please let us know where you are watching from. Leave a comment below. We love to hear from you. Please like the video and share with your family and friends. Also click the subscribe button so we can bring more videos to you. Thanks for being part of us.